We just came out of the weekend and we have to grapple with some truly insane anti-Semitism. Here is your Monday Menace. No, it's not Kanye West, although we'll get to him. No, this one's for Trump because his was more pure, more undiluted. He decided to bleat on Truth Social in response to nothing that anyone can figure out. He just decided to send this one day. No president has done more for Israel than I have. Somewhat surprisingly, however, our wonderful evangelicals are far more appreciative of this than the people of the Jewish faith, especially those living in the US. Those living in Israel, though, are a different story. Highest approval ratings in the world could easily be PM. US Jews have to get their act together and appreciate what they have in Israel before it is too late. So, talking about how people of the Jewish faith living in America should be grateful to him for something that he did that he won't define. And that because they're not grateful to him, they're being disloyal is already super disgusting and playing into some of the most deep-seated anti-Semitic tropes. The ideas of loyalty and how you're supposed to feel this attachment to either, I guess, Trump now, but generally he's saying you should feel an attachment to Israel, and whatever happens in Israel, you have some sort of obligation to feel the same way, which is insane. All of that would be bad. But to then throw on at the end, before it is too late, which I don't know, feels a little bit like a threat to me. And again, all of this was in response to nothing that anyone can identify. I don't know, like Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite, I guess, because she said the Benjamins thing. So let's not focus on this, I guess, which the right doesn't have a problem with. Fox News is not leading with this. They're perfectly fine with what he had to say about the loyalty of American Jewish people.
This is a common point by certain right-wing Jewish people. Like I always remember Ben Shapiro being interviewed by the BBC where he was being pointed on this, how he was being challenged on, well, wait, what right do you, Ben Shapiro, have to speak for all Jews in the United States, especially when like there are more progressive Jews, like politically progressive Jews in the United States than there are conservative Jews such as Ben Shapiro. So it's really weird for him to not only just say that he speaks for all Jewish people, but he will do this thing where he says, okay, these are like the good Jewish people, and then these are people who are like not Jewish enough based on nothing but their political affiliations. And it's ridiculous. And we have a current graphic if the technical director could get it off of the next tweet from Jonathan Greenblatt, who says how we don't need the former president who curries favor with extremists and anti-Semites to lecture us about the US-Israel relationship. It's not about quid pro quo. It rests on shared values and security interests. This Jew-splaining is insulting and disgusting. I'm glad he used that phrase because like black splaining, brown splaining. It's this thing where you start to speak for another culture, another culture's relationship. Now, yeah, I think the US-Israel relationship is very complicated, and I'd like to see that relationship have more consideration for the lives of Palestinians who live in an essentially open air prison. But I think that is like, for Donald Trump to come in here and say, "Oh, you better watch out. I'm basically could be the king of the Jews, more or less." Like he is way overstepping his boundaries, and it's not surprising because I mean, Ye is getting a lot of attention, and all of the big attention grabbers in politics and in media right now are going, "Okay, can I touch that? How much of that can I touch to also get this attention for myself?" And Trump's doing it as well. It's disgusting.
Do you think, I was actually wondering about that. Do you think that there's like a direct connection there? Is this him, like Kanye West is telling the nation that he wants to be, I guess, the most prominent anti-Semitic conservative. Is this Trump feeling like he's being like boxed out? And he needs to reassure them in this random message that again has no relationship to anything. Like, is this his attempt to reassure anti-Semites that he's got their back? Why do it now?
Yeah, nothing about Trump is necessarily random. It might feel random because it's poorly thought through and poorly executed. But no, Trump is extremely terminally online. And of course he's paying attention to what Ye is doing because I mean, Ye and Trump at one point were surrogates. In fact, we know like on record now, there's a call that Trump had right after the Tucker Carlson interview when all this started, where Trump was like, this guy might be going a little bit too far in this whole thing. I think he really needs to tap the brakes here. That's kind of like what he was saying there. Of course, we've had situations where Trump or people in the Trump orbit will at 1 minute go, oh wow, this is extreme. And then like 15 minutes later go, oh, but this might actually be red meat for our base. And so they try it, they realize that the Republican Party writ large will look at that and go, oh, well, that's a little bit disgusting, but we're all cheerleaders for the team, so we're gonna apologize for you anyways, thus giving them more wiggle room for this anti-Semitism. So it's a vicious cycle on the Republican Party that they don't seem willing to solve because it might cost them racist votes. I encourage rational people out there to just think about that, what that means for the country.
Yeah, 100%. And I would just like to see, okay, so the right is perfectly fine with this. They're okay. We don't have this graphic, but Newsmax actually at least is talking about this with a lower third that says Trump Jews comment draws backlash. So what's with the passive lower third? If it was Ilhan Omar, do you think they'd be saying, Ilhan Omar's comment draws backlash. We report on the conversation that's over there. We have no thoughts about it. We're not going to opine on it. Why all of a sudden are you so hands off? Because they don't actually care. And that's fine. Like if you like anti-Semites, if that's what you want, and we know that for many of the right it is, then just stop pretending, okay? If for no other reason that it's going to make Ben Shapiro really uncomfortable, and I would love to see it.
Last like 30-second example, right? Because on the left, you have an example of this kind of recently. In LA, you had a bunch of city council people who were caught on tape saying racist things against black people and Latino people. There wasn't this thing, largely like it was mixing in that relationship, but like there wasn't this thing on the left where people were like, oh, well, this is racism and it's bad, but we have some racist voters and maybe we can like tip this aside and treat this differently from racism we see on the Republican Party. No, there are people protesting outside of the remaining council member who hasn't resigned yet out of his house as they speak for the past like several days now. So this is not something that the left does. This is something where the right is like, oh, we have terrible people on our side, let's protect them for votes. It just shows why this is asymmetric politics that we're dealing with right now. We're not fighting the same battle. The Democrats need to realize this and not stoop down to their level, but understand this strategically.
Yeah, and as you're pointing out, she was actually forced out. There were actual consequences on the right. I mean, come on, that's just not gonna happen. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.